HRM Summit Middle East 2021. How are you doing today?
Very good. Thank you so much for the kind introduction, Helen. Yes, I'm Tamara, speaker practice. And today I'll take you through on a masterclass to help you just really harness your own learning agility and sort of give you insights into how to future-proof your career.
Perfect. Before you get started, Tamara, let me share your profile with our audience. Just give me 2 minutes to do that. So
Sure.
We've got Tamara joining us, and she works with clients to identify C-suite leaders who will unlock growth and drive transformation. As a mother and conscious consumer, she's particularly curious about innovations that enable sustainable consumption. Her personal passion areas are food tech and sustainable fashion, beauty, packaging, durables, and ingredients. She also leads Farm to Fork practice in Singapore. I believe that regardless of industry, the best-in-class Chief People Officer is a business leader who creates customer value through people and data. She's honored to be contributing to the talent transformation journey within the human capital function by leading Korn Ferry's HR Center of Excellence for APAC. Prior to her career in search, she was a private equity lawyer with Linklaters in London, Hong Kong, and Shanghai. Born of mixed heritage, she's proud to call Singapore her home since 2009. Feel free to reach out to her for coffee and a meaningful conversation. You can connect with her on the platform as well. And her favorite topics are future of work, alt protein, conscious consumer, food tech, agri-tech, women in agri, sustainable beauty, circular economy, diversity, equity and inclusion, innovation, and inclusive leadership. That's a lot.
That is a lot. That was quite a mouthful, Helen.
Thank you. It just shows how diversified you are in your choice of creating impact within your community and society. That's fantastic, Tamara. So glad to have you with us. And I'm sure our audience is going to love every bit of your masterclass today.
Well, I hope so. Thank you. And it's hopefully a cohort that's very close to my heart because, believe it or not, I'm half Egyptian. So the Middle East has a very special place in my heart, and I miss it very much. Haven't been in a long time due to COVID. So at least I get to connect with you all virtually. And I hope there'll be some value in this class for a lot of you.
I'm sure there will be tons of it.
Lovely. So is it okay? Should I get started and share my screen?
Yes, please. Go ahead and share your screen, and I'll give you a heads up.
Okay. Hang on a second. Just making sure I'm sharing the right screen. Nowadays, you never know. I think this should be the right one. Do you see the?
Yes. Perfect.
Okay. Fantastic.
So, Tamara, please enlarge your screen to full size so that the audience is able to see it.
Okay. Hang on. Full screen. Does that? Yeah. Does that work?
Not yet. Not yet.
Okay. So you know what? I think I've shared the wrong screen. Give me 1 second.
Take your time.
Okay. So let me make sure I'm sharing the right one here.
Perfect.
Is this the full screen one? You've got it?
Awesome. Yes.
Can you see my cursor moving? Okay, good, great. Super. So
all the best, Tamara.
Thank you so much, Helen. So I actually can't see other people on this, so I'm hoping that you'll not make me feel lonely as I'm sort of going through this.
You're in the speaker room while all the audience can see you and hear you. So you're in the speaker room. They are in the delegate room, so you can't see them unless you have your screen delegate. But you can have the delegate screen on. But I would rather you focus on your screen, and then we'll help you towards the end of your session with the Q&A that is posted, all the questions that are posted. We will share that with you at your end of your session.
Wonderful. Okay, let's get started. So really what I want to sort of set a frame on first is that this is supposed to be a session where you actually gain something out of it. So I've tried to structure this in terms of setting the stage for you to understand sort of all the different aspects, all the different sort of market trends and dynamics that we're seeing across the world, that and then how those really have an impact on the ask of the HR organization. Then I want to share with you a little bit sort of what we're seeing happening, what's the evolution of HR, because I think it's important to sort of, just get a sense of where are things moving towards, because that really frames it in terms of what the kind of questions are that a CPO will be faced with as they look into the future and as they look to sort of ready their organizations. So basically, what are CEOs asking their CHROs to help them with? And I think that sort of sets the scene for, what's the role of a CPO, and then sort of translating that into what is the CPO of the future success profile look at. Then I'll sort of make it a little bit more personal and help you with your own reflection on your own journey. And we'll have breakouts as well, where I would like you to do a couple of exercises. There will be 3 of them that you will be doing with a partner. And then we'll just hone in on what does a learning agility mean, because I think the world that we're going into really requires not just the sort of basic skills and the sort of experiences, but also the agility to be able to look into the future. So without further ado, I will go into how business needs are changing and how the world is changing, really. So let me just move this here. So what we've seen is that there are really a lot of mega trends, and at any point, please feel free to take a screenshot. This is all sort of made for your consumption. So the megatrends and disruptive drivers that we see right now are really sort of the changing business needs that have evolved because of the time and history that we find ourselves in now. So we've got the generational shift. I think it's been a long time since we've had so many different generations in one sort of company and one workforce at the same time. And this decade, we'll see the baby boomers really start to, I don't want to say exit, because they are not exiting. They are essentially transitioning from being full-time executives who lead the companies and have led the companies up to the stage that they are now. And they are shifting towards very much a more agile way of working. So we always think of gig workers as being young software engineers. Well, actually, what we're observing is that it's a little bit different. And now we see a lot of private equity firms hiring really experienced executives that are no longer in full-time roles or don't want to be in full-time leadership roles. They're giving this space and handing the baton over to Gen X and the millennials. And instead, they're working more on a project basis as partners with private equity firms. So there's a lot of dynamics that we see here. And so what that means with that whole shift in generation is that, there is a different understanding of technology and how technology infuses, enables, but also disrupts the workforce that we are all a part of right now. And so that means that we've also uncovered certain themes in HR transformation. So what we've seen is that there is a real demand on HR BPs, for example, to wear a bunch of different hats. On the one hand, you have to sort of be specialized in certain HR areas, but on the other hand, you really have to be a business leader as well. So the ask is really to be more broad-based. Then when it comes to actually problem solving, we have for decades worked with a 3-pillar model as being the best in class HR organization. So organized around, your COEs that are rewards, talent management, talent acquisition, employee relations to a certain extent. And for us to build the HR organization on those pillars. Well, in the future, or as we're transitioning into the future, the ask of businesses is to have a much more agile way of looking at solving HR problems. So in the sense, coming together like a scrum to solve a certain problem and then dispersing again to move on to the next project or the next problem. The other thing that we've seen as well, and I'm sure a lot of other panelists have spoken about this, is really the employee as a customer, the employee experience. And at Korn Ferry, we've done a fair amount of research where we've really seen, especially in the consumer sector, a real correlation, a real connection between the experience that an employee has in an organization and the impact that has on the customer experience. So if I can share some examples that we've seen, for example, in hospitality, where the organization has been empowering the employees, and I think we've all seen that, customer service professionals who really have a sense of ownership and really go out of their way to really solve a customer problem, or to be flexible and to see, okay, well, you know, actually, usually we do it this way, but let me talk to my manager, or let me see if there's anything that I can do for you that can help me solve your problem right now. And just give me a minute and I'll come back. When we have a culture in our organizations where an employee is rewarded and recognized for taking ownership and is empowered to make such decisions, it really has a direct impact as well on the end experience of the customer. And again, HR is really critical in that transformation journey. So specifically, sort of these mega trends that I described earlier, what they mean in terms of the specific challenges that we've seen emerge from these mega trends is, for example, that we've seen a lot of companies move towards different ways of doing performance management. And I think there is a bigger expectation now of HR to be familiar with all the different models of performance management and see whether they can be implemented in whole or in part in their own organization. So for example, you know, do we want to do away with the annual performance reviews? Does that still serve us? If Netflix doesn't do it, or Amazon, et cetera, doesn't do it, shouldn't we be doing that? And so we're seeing a lot of very established organizations having conversations around, should we actually experiment with putting away with performance ratings to create a growth mindset. So those are conversations where it is important to not necessarily have all the answers, but it is important to know what different organizations are doing. And it is important to have a point of view that can then be used to have a constructive discussion as to what works for your organization. So a lot of conversations around there is no playbook that is going to be cookie cutter and work for everybody, but there are different ways of, you know, adapting what different organizations are doing to make it work for us. So the CPO needs to be able to create a playbook for their own organization. And here's a double click really on that whole concept of not one size fits all. So whereas, you know, there's been this whole trend of shifting towards all these like neatly organized pillars, and then you have an HCM that goes across all of them. Now the sort of next iteration has been that we're going towards a more modular system of doing HR that really fits with what we want to look at and how we want to shape our talent management practices, our performance management practices. And so how is that going to be reflected in the way we are organized as an HR organization? How is it going to reflect itself in the technology that is embedded and is supposed to enable that strategy? So again, going to a more agile and flexible, maybe modular approach to HR. We're all becoming hypermatrixed, and there is definitely a move towards a democratic HR model where it's more of a pull rather than a push model. So you're really looking at employees saying, I can do self-service. I don't need to ask somebody. I can just go online and figure out how many days of leave do I have, for example. And to that point, it is becoming much more digital. And there's a bigger ask for innovation. Yeah. So just to set the frame in terms of the kind of questions that, you know, the CPOs have to ask themselves as they sort of drive their organizations into the future. So we're looking at, how do I anticipate changing market conditions? So not just reacting to what outside forces or what your C-level and your board is asking you, but to really also be proactive and saying, hey, I can see on the horizon that we're going to have a talent shortage in this area. What can we do to buy or build to create a bench that is going to be available when we need it? Of course, again, this differentiated employee experience, I'm sure you've all experienced COVID. One of the things that I think makes this such an interesting time is that we have all experienced the same challenge at the same time. At one point or another, we've all been locked at home, working from home, and having to create connectivity, having to create, retain a culture perhaps even, when you cannot assemble in a physical space together. Case in point, this conference, where everything is digital and online. But so in that kind of scenario, how do you still make sure that there is an employee experience that still differentiates you as a company, you as employer, as opposed to another company? For an employee, they might just say, it's become very transactional, whether I'm working for this company or I log off and I log on to another computer and I work for another company for, 10 to 50% more pay. What's keeping me here with you? So that is obviously a very big question that we see a lot of CPOs having to really, ask themselves and ponder about. So as the CPO is looking towards all these phenomenal sort of events that are happening, the mega trends and what that means at the ask of HR, how do we approach sort of employee experience? How do we maintain and build culture in this environment? How do we attract and retain the best talent in order for us to be able to achieve our collective organizational goals? So the way I like to think of it is that there is no such thing as a perfect CPO, but there is such thing as a strong CPO who has invested a lot of time in building a toolbox. You could build your career in the most progressive and wonderful way. And from a CV perspective, a search consultant like me may look at it and say, yeah, wonderful, you tick all the boxes that we need. But putting you into an environment where there is a completely different paradigm in terms of industry, or another pandemic or something similar happens, your experience may be helpful, but really it's the toolbox, it's the agility to be able to respond rather than react to different scenarios. That ability to use your mental agility, but also your people agility and change agility is actually what's going to differentiate you from another HR leader, really. So to our mind, the future people officer really needs to be a people strategist and consultant. They need to be a brand ambassador, and they need to be a talent scout. Of course, technology is becoming very much a thing now, with talent analytics becoming much more useful now than it was before. So in some ways, a CPO also needs to be a technologist, an insight generator, and use those insights in order to create an employee experience that is differentiated. And most of all, and I think this is foundational, a really savvy change leader as well. Now, I don't want to say that everybody needs to score 5 out of 5 in all of these buckets to be, fit for the future. I think part of it is also realizing that we don't have all of the answers, and we don't need to be perfect in all of these. But I think what is really important is to be self-aware. If you're not an HR technologist, you know that you need to build a bench of HR technologists around you that will help you and enable you. If you're not good with spreadsheets and you need someone who's going to be able to translate the data into a story, well, then you know that you need to either learn or hire somebody who's a data scientist and has a passion for people who can translate that for you, so that you can use that as an actionable insight when you're talking to your board and your CEO. So here's the success profile of the future for a chief people officer. And at Corn Ferry, we like to think in terms of the 4 dimensions of leadership. And if you're really interested in this and understanding, I've got a link later on where you can play around with that a little bit and see where your sort of 4 dimensions fall. But essentially how we like to sort of dissect our leadership model is in terms of looking at leadership competencies. So those are the things that essentially you acquire during your career. They can include things like, being able to persuade, being able to balance your stakeholders. And then there's the traits that you are actually born with. These things stay relatively constant throughout your lifetime. So some of us are born introverts, some of us are born extroverts, some of us are born with perhaps more positivity than others. These are essentially the foundations of our makeup, but that doesn't mean that we are doomed to be limited by that, because you can always acquire leadership competencies if you're focused and if you're really willing to learn and use every opportunity you get to develop yourself as a leader. Drivers are really around the things that drive us and that energize us at work. So many people are perhaps energized by, collaborating with a lot of different colleagues. They're energized by working in a team. Others prefer to be in a really highly technical role where they really focus on solving perhaps really challenging puzzles and problems for the company. And you often get that you have people that are really made for a company that is currently in massive, change and transformation mode where there's a lot of complexity, whereas others are really more sort of energized by a company that's in a phase where there is steady growth, and it's about really creating a culture around collaboration and moving forward without sort of masses of external and internal challenges. The experiences, and I'll double click on that later just to give you a foundational understanding from our perspective as to sort of the classic things that we usually look out for when we look for a CPO profile, so that you can build an inventory for yourself to see, okay, what can I pick up along the way? But bottom line, there are always going to be areas of learning agility, and there's always going to be areas of potential career derailers. And so these are things for you to sort of discover so that you can set yourself up and really take ownership of your own career journey and your own growth. So this is sort of the inventory that I was talking about earlier. And this is sort of, I would say, the pre-COVID way of looking at a people officer. When, for example, someone like myself who's looking for a global CPO, the experience that I typically look for in a CPO for them to be able to master, the usual business cycles that a company goes through. So the things that I look out for is number one is always as an ask is commercial acumen. All of our CEOs and boards that we work with are looking for an HR leader who is not just a functional expert, but actually someone who can understand the business and can understand how to connect the strategy of the business to actually the people strategy and then operationalize that across the entire organization. The other thing that we're looking for, and I just alluded to that, is the ability to connect strategy. So someone who really understands, what is my CEO, what is my board trying to achieve? What does that mean actually from a people perspective? So what are the outside influences, not just immediately now, but global influences that could have an impact on the strategy? And how do I play into that strategy as the leader of the people function and helping to galvanize the employees of the organizations around that goal? The other thing we look at is breadth. So I'm always happy when I see HR professionals that have taken a risk, that have gone perhaps in a COE, but then also gone into a generalist role. I like to see a diversity in terms of the type of industries, but also in terms of the type of business phases. So it's always wonderful to see somebody who has worked on M&A or divestitures. And it's always good to see someone who's done both high growth, but also restructuring, because I think those two are both really, really important experiences for people to have gone through. Typically, we also want to see some sort of comfort level working across different regions, working across different geographies, as well as cultures. So that is something that I would always encourage you to gain exposure to. The board level presence is something that is also a given when you're talking about a CPO. So the ability to really articulate your strategy and your recommendations in a succinct way that informs the board of what is happening and perhaps what needs to happen. The quality of board papers is often a discussion topic when we're talking about the caliber of an HR leader. Good, and then we've got stakeholder management, so that is again a given. We've bucketed the ability to deal with unions into stakeholder management, but I think whilst that's really important as well to have had experience to regulated industries and workforce councils, etc. I think what's also really important is the other stakeholders. So CSR sometimes is bunched under HR, but really what you want to make sure is that you understand how to manage crises that you may not have caused, but that maybe could have an impact on the employer brand. So the ability to handle those situations, the experience of having done that before, is also an important thing that I would say if you get the chance to do that, do so. Change leadership, I've mentioned before, so I won't go into that much detail about that, but it's really about understanding what makes people tick, when are people resistant, and how do you work around that? I've had the pleasure and the honor of meeting some really savvy change leaders, and it's always interesting to hear from them how they've tackled a big change management project, where they get their buy-in, how they have dealt with potential detractors and derailers. So to the extent that you have the opportunity to gain exposure to that, I'd really recommend it. Functional is, of course, very important. So I'd love to see a CPO CV in front of me always that has a really good sort of progressive experience, but also sort of strategic input into everything from rewards, talent, employee relations. And hopefully in the future, we'll see more competency and more sort of exposure to analytics. But yes, I mean, this is a big ask. But again, this is sort of just an inventory for you to think, oh, I think maybe I'll put my hand up for this because it might give me exposure to this or the other. So then that brings me to my next point around what is agility. These are all the things that I've mentioned before are really all around experiences that you cannot replicate in a short period of time. It takes time. They have to percolate. They have to sit with you. But agility is a different matter. Agility is really something that you can develop, even if you're not naturally an agile person. What does it actually mean? So I went and I looked at agility, the definition, and I think this is Oxford Dictionary, but I really quite like the way they had distinguished agility into two buckets, right? So these are already two types of agility that this dictionary talks about. One is physical and the other one is mental. Well, at Korn Ferry, we actually think that there is also, a bunch of different ways of looking at agility. And we really bucket the way we look at agility into mental agility, people agility, change agility, results agility, and situational self-awareness. And so all of these areas really are super important to hone. We often see people who do really well in, say, 3 of these, but have underdeveloped 1 or 2 others of these. So I think when we talk about agility, it's really important to be more specific and precise as to where the sources of our agility are and where we could do more to hone those skills, to hone that ability. Good. So again, when we're looking at formative leadership experiences, these are sort of the things that as a firm, as our research has shown us, are really formative leadership experiences. So when we look at future potential or high potentials, we like to look at these different areas to see whether somebody has gained exposure to it already. And what we found is that, it's, you can gain exposure to them, you can have exposure to them, but then it's how have you processed these experiences? How have you internalized them? And how have you made them part of your inventory to, fall back on as a leader? And so now what we'll do is actually really go to the workshop part of this session. So I really want to sort of give you the opportunity to think about what you have acquired as an ability during your career. So if it's okay, I would like for us all to sort of split into groups of 2 with a partner. And I'd love for you to work with your partner to describe a time when you had to negotiate a large scale or critical deal or a contract or a labor agreement. Now, you may or may not have had exposure to this, but to some extent, if you've had to sort of negotiate a contract at some point with multiple stakeholders, I think that's a really good starting point. And I'd love for you to sort of, if you could take a screenshot or just think of this and take that with you. I will give you about, because I want you to have time to really reflect on this, I'd like for us to take about 10 to 15 minutes on this slide. Yeah. So if you could split up now, that would be fantastic. Okay, I see more people are coming back online now, so I really hope you've had a chance to sort of reflect on this first exercise, to just sort of think and note down what your experience was when you were managing a large-scale negotiation, a critical deal, or a contract. And so really, I hope that this exercise has allowed you to sort of look at, what were your challenges, who were your stakeholders in the situation, and what did you learn from the experience? What would you do differently next time round? So actually, if you wouldn't mind, Helen, it would be really great if you could put these questions to the audience, to the participants, because I would really like this to be an interactive session. So it would be really great if people could sort of like start putting into the chat box and sort of sharing, kind of, let's start with the first one. What were the common challenges that you had? If some of you would like to comment, I'm sure you can also do that anonymously if you prefer to do that, or direct message Helen, who will then forward the comments to me. Yeah. So Helen, have we had anyone sort of
Yes.
share any one of their experiences? Yeah, anything you would like to share from the participants?
Hi, Tamara. This is in the setup that we have, they can't get together in groups of two. So
we haven't had individual
responses. Can you hear me?
So nobody's had a chance to sort of reflect on this exercise and sort of think
they
about.
Probably have, but individually, not in groups. So
that's fine. That's fine. Fine. If we can get them together in groups, and at least it would be really nice for them to share in the chat. Unfortunately, I don't have visibility of that. So Helen, if you would be so kind as to sort of share a little bit and help us to interact a little bit and make this a bit more of an interactive session, that would be fantastic, because I think that's the best way to learn, is to share experiences.
Yeah, but Tamara, we don't have them in groups. They're doing it individually. Probably they haven't put in their responses individually. So I think they can probably reflect it, come back to us later, maybe do that in their organizations, within their colleagues, and maybe we can then share that with you.
Yeah, that would be great. So why don't you stay online, Helen, because I don't have visibility of the chat. So unfortunately, I can't see whether.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't have visibility right now. So it'd be really great if you could stay online and just help me to sort of create that connectivity.
Sure, go ahead.
Fantastic.
But
good.
But try and avoid breaking them into groups, because they don't have access to break into groups. That's the way the platform is set up.
You've said that a couple of times.
Share this. These are amazing exercises, which they probably can take back to their office, handle, coordinate with their colleagues and bring them, get into groups with their colleagues, and then we can share that reflection with you.
Sure. Yeah, you've mentioned that. I think we've got it now. Thanks so much.
You're very welcome.
So as you're sort of looking through the different formative experiences, I'd love for you to reflect as well and look at, how has this honed my ability to drive results? How's this made me better at my results agility? What part of the sort of interaction with other stakeholders has made me more sort of self-aware, right? Of things that I wasn't perhaps aware before I went through that exercise. And the other thing is sort of looking at managing change. So as you're looking through this, that big contract that you negotiated, think about, how was the change management process? What was your experience there, and what did you learn out of it? Good. So I'd like to then go to the second reflection exercise. And Helen, if you'd like to come back on board, that would be fantastic. So since we can't break up into partners, I'd love for you to just take some time and think sort of the last time you did a large scale change initiative. Whose trust did you have to win? What challenges surprised you during the experience? And what did you learn from the process? Perhaps also, what would you do differently next time? So although you cannot sort of break up into groups and talk to each other, I think what would be really nice if you could take a few minutes and just sort of reflect back on your career and think about, what are some of the great big change initiatives that you were part of? That could be anything from rolling out a new, system, a new HCM system. It can be, changing the way compensation is run in your organization, doing, a job grading exercise, anything that really involved changing the way things are done that impacts your processes, SOPs, or the way your business is organized. It could include also, supporting your business leaders to acquire a new business or expand into a new business line. So I'd just like you to take a couple of minutes, and I think it's really important to do that now. Just take 5 minutes and think about, what kind of big change initiative have I been involved in or have I had to drive? And as you do that, just write a couple of sentences, take a notebook and write a couple of sentences. So I do think it's important to go through this process and think about, whose trust did you have to win, right? So if you could take just a couple of minutes, I'd really like you to reflect on this and just make some notes. And we'll be back in about 5-10 minutes to hopefully get your interactive responses. And please do put them in the chat when you're ready, because I will be going through these questions one by one.
Tamara, for reflection number 1, exercise 1, we had one comment that came in which says, I had to let go around 5,000 employees, female blue collars in their 50s at one company. So that was.
Wow, that's definitely a really large scale kind of thing to go through. That must have been a really formative experience. I'd love to hear more from that person as to sort of how that shaped them as a professional. How they managed to become more. Yeah. So that's really interesting, right?
Very, very. And all women. So makes it even more interesting.
Yeah.
How that created an impact.
Yeah, exactly.
So we'll wait for the second one to come in, and I'll keep you updated, Tamara.
Fantastic. Good. So let's give people another about 5 minutes from now to sort of think about that, and then it'd be great to sort of again put it to the floor and for people who are comfortable to share their insights.
I would urge everyone on the platform to please share in detail so that Tamara can run you all through it, discuss it, and then maybe probably find solutions as well. So I would urge everyone to just put in the comments. Well. It doesn't matter. There's no wrong and right answer to this. Whatever you'll feel, just go ahead, be vulnerable, and share your insights, please.
Okay, I'll give everyone another 2 minutes or so to reflect, and then let's regroup.
Tamara is waiting. Give me some answers.
Tamara, I think with the silence, people are thinking it's a technical problem. For all the audience that is there, it's not a technical problem. Tamara is waiting for your feedback. Please, I would encourage you to post in your comments. It doesn't have to be a large scale initiative. It could be any initiative, a change initiative that you have within your organization that you'll have attempted. So feel free, it doesn't have to be large scale. Am I right, Tamara?
Absolutely. This is
Yes.
really meant for everyone as part of their development journey, regardless of where they are.
Absolutely. So the silence is not a technical problem. Tamara is waiting for your feedback. So let those responses come in, waiting for you.
Okay, great. So I think, Helen, how are the responses? Have people sort of provided any sort of insights or input into what they've done?
Give me yeah, Tamara, give me a second. I'll have one of my team members read the responses for you.
Fabulous.
Just give me a second.
Sure.
So Tamara, I'm going to read one which says, it was actually easier to implement than I expected because I identified some relatively unused government support mechanisms. These ladies were tired and ready to stop working as they had mostly started to work around 14 to 16-year-old.
Oh, wow.
So they welcomed our solutions that helped them bridge their unemployment time until retirement eligibility. I learned that with creativity on the technical side and empathy for the staff, you can put in place solutions that are a true win, not just for the company, but also for the employees. I was very young at the time, 26 years old, and it helped to shape my approach to manage HR. So that's one of them.
That's amazing. I just
And
want to double click
that
on that.
message came from Sandrine Bardot.
Okay, fantastic. I think that's really a wonderful way to sort of describe how you know, these experiences give us an opportunity to become more, you know, empathetic. We can certainly become hardened by these opportunities and let them, you know, discourage us. But what a wonderful way to approach this kind of a challenge, really, with empathy. And so that's really what we talk about as well when we talk about people agility. It's about an ability to adapt ourselves to the different circumstances. Great, Helen. Were there any other comments? Hi, Helen. Are you back on or not?
Yes, 1 second, Tamara. I'll get a team member of mine to read out the others. Just give me a second.
Nice. So there's responses. That's lovely.
Yes, yes.
Fabulous.
They're a bit slow. We would have expected them to come in a little more. I think people are inhibited to share their experiences.
Don't be shy. Don't be shy.
I know.
Yeah,
Let
I
it
mean, I
just
think
get
we're all
roll.
amongst HR professionals, so you know that in order to
Exactly.
absorb knowledge, you have to reflect on it and you have to internalize it and make it, you know, relevant to yourself. That's really how we grow and how we, you know, I don't want to talk at you for an hour and a half. It's much more important that participants absorb this, and this is really an opportunity for them to sort of reflect and take inventory. Because that's essentially what we're trying to create here, right? We're not trying to create a textbook for how to be a great CHRO or a great CPO. We're trying to build a toolbox for people to dip into. And that's sort of the source of agility, right? And so just learning what I'm saying isn't going to cut the mustard. That's really not going to make anybody more agile.
And it's never a one size fits all. So people can learn from each other's experiences as well while sharing. So I would encourage all of the attendees to please share your experiences.
Yes, please. That's really important. And it's really enriching for everybody. And it's not a school. I won't call on you if you don't raise your hand, but I really want to encourage you that you participate.
We're not going to put anyone in the spotlight, so don't worry. You can stay anonymous.
No, just me, Helen. Poor me, I'm in the spotlight.
So you can stay anonymous. We won't call out your names. Feel free to share your experiences. And we are more than happy to kind of have Tamara, you know, share her insights as well. So stay anonymous if you have to, but do share in your detail, share in your experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. So Helen, I see the number of participants has actually gone up. So I hope that people are finding this quite useful. We've got 57 people on the line. So I'm hoping that there is something that people are taking away from this. Good. Do we want to wait for more of these responses, or? I'm
just going to step out of the speaker room and reach out my colleagues, and I'll come right back. So you can just.
Oh, the sound is gone now. So. Great. Okay, so I think we'll take some time at the end to sort of reflect on a couple of those comments. But let's go to the next reflection exercise, which is really around, you know, a couple of other areas that you can double click on. So really dealing with a sudden crisis. Those are kind of the things that we're looking for.
Ready?
Hello?
Hi. Okay, Tamara, if you move on to reflection 3, I've got Sri with me, and he will be sharing some of the comments that have come in.
Fantastic. Can't wait.
Good morning, Tamara. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm really good. Thank you. So I'm really eager to hear what has come out of the reflection.
Okay, great. Just give me a second. Let me set up my system. Zoom sometimes gives me all kinds of trouble. So give me a second till I get it done. Okay, great. Can you hear me, guys?
Yeah.
Okay. I do understand that Ms. Tamara has been waiting kindly for so long for somebody to start responding to her exercise that she has put in. I do know that in some parts of the world it's late in the evening, but we have so many people online. Come on, guys. You might have just had lunch and gone to sleep. Come on, wake up and show us some love. I'm waiting. But I do have some responses, Tamara, all from women. So the men folk are not even responding now. So let me.
Oh, that's okay. We don't want to put anyone on the spot. So, but yeah, if you have any comments, that would be fantastic.
I'd love to put my very good friend Sandrine on the spot for a minute, if you allow. So Sandrine writes, I was very young at that time, 26 years old. I thought she's only 28 now, so it must have happened 2 years ago. And it helped to shape my approach to manage HR. So she's talking about what she did when she was young to shape the way in which she managed HR. That was some years ago. I don't want to reveal her age, so she said many years ago, 26 years old she was. I learned that with creativity on the technical side and empathy for the staff. So these two are the two things that you are talking about, largely focused on, and I'm sure in your coming slides. Empathy for your staff. You can put in place solutions that are a true win, not just for the company, but also for the employees. And you again touched upon being a fine balance between the organization and people. Being chief people officer role, I guess that's one of the issues that she says. And it was also easier to implement than I expected because I identified some relatively unused governance support mechanisms, which I thought she already shared that with you. One of the key things that I had to do was to gain a lot of trust from all the employees and the trade unions, because see, that's something which is a bit alien to our region here in the Middle East. Trade unions are there, but they're not as vociferous, aggressive, active, if you will.
Same in Asia. Well, same in Singapore for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh yeah, I mean, the people tend to focus a lot more on productivity rather than, trade unionism, if you will. And a lot of other communist countries, it's very, very active. Our socialist countries. Yeah. And the trade unions, as well as the government representatives. So, I mean, ideally, she's really talking about some sort of a Shangri-La where government unions and employees sort of come together and doing the happy dance, which seldom happens in many, many parts of the world. She talked about that. I had to let go around 5,000 employees, female blue collars in their 50s at one company. This was another exercise, another experience that she's had. As I told you, Tamara, there are a bit unresponsive crowd as of now, but I'm going to really push them to get them online as much as I can and be as interactive. But I'd like to leave by saying thank you so much, Tamara, for your patience and understanding. And let me get off stage and work the chat in the background. I'll leave it to Helen to take it over.
Super. Okay. Well, thank you so much. So it's time for our third reflection exercise. And really this time I'd like people to focus on how they've dealt with a sudden crisis. Again, looking at, what was the situation at hand. And I think we all have something to share, for example, about how we've dealt with the sudden crisis of COVID. How did you respond to that? And how did you find solutions? Who did you have to work with? And what did you learn about yourself as a leader as you were, going through the crisis and the different sort of stages that we all went through? So I think, again, this is another opportunity to look at, what are the things that helped you to hone your learning agility? And what are the things that, maybe you would have done differently as you went through the crisis? Now, with 2020 hindsight, I think we all have perfect vision and we all can see sort of, oh, well, maybe I would have done this or that differently. Because as we move forward into this decade, we're likely going to be faced with more crises and more disruption. So how has let's take the COVID situation on its own, like how has that sort of shown you who you are, and what has that sort of taught you about your own leadership style that you would like to make sure that you take inventory of and carry forward as part of your arsenal as you create your own learning agility as an HR leader? So again, I'd just like everybody to take 5 minutes, think things through, take some notes, and feel free to sort of share that. Like you can direct message Helen and tell her, what that actually showed to you. What did you learn? And we could make this even a little more, succinct. For example, you don't have to share an essay, but if you could share one word that you feel describes the one thing that you've learned most out of COVID, what would that be in one word, if you had to use one word to describe that? So I can tell you for sure, for me, well, I have a lot of words to describe what COVID has done for me and how it's been me, how it sort of shaped me on this journey. But I think for me, the number one thing is really humility. I think I really, learned how to humble myself, and how actually small and insignificant we are, no matter what sort of we carry around with us in the world. But I think I found COVID to be quite a humbling experience, and it's also made me come closer to my maker, and so that's been a really real experience for me. And I think I hope many of you will join me in just sort of sharing one word that describes what COVID has done for you in terms of your own leadership journey.
Tamara, talking about COVID, we've got a comments saying, I used my mental and people agility to cut through the challenges presented by COVID crisis.
Wow, that's great. That's great. Yeah, I would say it's really tested all of our agility, right? Definitely, it's tested our ability to think on our feet. And I think also the other thing, like another word I would describe, I don't know about you, Helen, but for me, another word is vulnerability.
Yes.
Like I've really actually realized that it's okay to show vulnerability. It's okay to say, I don't have all the answers.
True.
And I think as we go into the future, I think it's really, really important that we don't pretend to have a playbook for things that nobody has a playbook for, and that we crowdsource ideas of how to move things forward and how to move organizations forward. I think the best organizations or the best teams are the ones where there's also really inclusion of different points of view. So how do you do that in a really thoughtful way? Because as you rightly say, I think this is a really good example of that, right? Like there's people who are hesitant to say what they're thinking. And I think it's important to create a safe space for people to be able to express themselves and to contribute their ideas, because you never know, the person who you thought was least likely to have the most deepest insights or the most innovative problem-solving ideas might be the one who's the most shy. So how do you encourage them to come forward and to say what is important to them? And I think from our perspective, what we've seen is that vulnerability is really, really important. Saying, you know what, I don't have all the answers. What do you think?
Sure. And also to create, as you rightly said, a safe space where you're not judgmental about opinions, for them to be vulnerable as they can be, because you never know how your one word or one idea can impact another, or an organization for that matter.
Sandrine wants Tamara's exercise.
You want me to put it on the screen?
Yes. Can you share the exercise 3 on your screen, please? Can you do a share screen? Because we've got comments that they would like for you to share the exercise number 3.
Okay, let me put this onto, hang on, sorry.
If you can enlarge your screen.
Yeah, I'm working on it. There you go. Can you see it properly?
No, we can see multiple screens. Yeah.
Oh, really? Okay, hang on.
Yep, you can see 2. You can see 2 slides. Now you're off it.
Yeah, let me just share this one. I think this is an earlier PPT version.
Yes, perfect. Perfect.
Yeah,
perfect.
So yes, so this is really exercise number 3. And I had multiple options just in case people, want to be able to use different sort of topics to explore their agility on. But yeah, absolutely, this is really what I wanted people to have a think about.
I think when you say dealing with sudden crisis, I think the whole world was dealing with a sudden crisis, right?
Yes.
So this
I
is
think
a common
we're
one
experts now. Yes, I think we can all tick that box that we have dealt with a sudden crisis. Yeah.
Now we all have a PhD in handling crisis, because
We do.
whether you are at the top end or the bottom end, we all face the same situation.
Yeah, absolutely. So wonderful. So has anybody sort of shared some words as to how it sort of developed them as a leader?
Not yet, Tamara. I would encourage people, even if it's a word, please share that so that we can have some meaningful dialogue here. And we are here to learn, we're here to share, we're here to, make mistakes. It doesn't matter. There's no right or wrong answer. Whatever you feel, please share that. Keep that coming.
Yeah, absolutely. And that really is that's also the crux of agility, right? Is not there is no textbook, right? So there's no right or wrong. It's about what has worked for you and what's been your reflection on your journey. So how have you grown? And what have you taken out of this crisis management? So yeah, I mean, I just reiterate, for me, it was really about vulnerability. Good.
And it doesn't have to be large scale. It could be at any scale. We've got people from SMEs, we've got people from large organizations.
Yeah.
Share your experiences, irrespective of how big or small your organization is. It's from a personal perspective as HR. What has been your journey and what has been your experiences? Please share that so that we can take this forward. And you got some amazing questions there, Tamara. This should incite people to actually get thinking and, be able to learn from this experience.
Yeah. And so, I mean, this was really designed as an exercise, but what I want to do is I want to give people the opportunity to actually take a screenshot of this to take home with them, right? Because this is really a whole inventory that we use to help people develop on their own leadership journey. So whether you are, only at the beginning of your leadership journey, or whether you're already a practiced CPO, I think it's worth just sort of reflecting on these experiences that we have here and saying, okay, I actually haven't helped, I haven't had the exposure to helping an organization, close down or divest a business line. Then at least if you know that, the next time the opportunity comes around to say, hey, would you mind helping us with this? You're like, oh yeah, that's a new experience. That's going to teach me something and give me the opportunity to stretch myself in a different area. So I'd really like to encourage you to think about, okay, where can I put my hand up to gain more experiences such as these? And I suppose, working as an expatriate can also be an opportunity to grow and to stretch yourself. Being thrown in a completely different type of culture or environment and having to sort of understand how different people in different parts of the world think is really an enriching exercise and can really help in terms of your people and change agility as well. Yeah. Great. So I think if people have sort of reflected on this and are internalizing this, but perhaps they're not ready to sort of share with the whole crowd as to what their words are. What I'd like to do is I'd like to close this off with an opportunity for you to sort of take an inventory. So this is a website that you can go to that we have. It's a completely free membership, and you can actually do a free self-assessment that will help you to sort of start understanding yourself. So it's almost like a psychometric that you can take that will tell you sort of what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, and what could you do to sort of develop yourself as a professional. Yeah.
Tamara, can you share some experiences on reflection 1, 2, or 3 that you might have had with your experience with clients? Anything that you could share that would be insightful for our audience?
Yeah, absolutely. So if I go back to reflection exercise number 1, so negotiating a large scale or critical deal. So, I mean, in some ways, sometimes this is also negotiating a vendor contract. And that can be anything from, a couple of $1,000s to millions and hundreds of millions of dollars. And when you are the one who is driving that, I think what's important as you go through that experience is to think about the needs of all the different people that you are negotiating with, that you're negotiating for, and the end result that you're looking for. So in some ways, this can give you an understanding of, and it can help you to sort of prepare yourself for, for example, if you have to deal with a sudden crisis. But it also helps you to sort of think ahead, almost like a chess player, to think, okay, what is going to be my first move? And then what are the potential moves of the other people? And, how do I already try to sort of build buy-in for the critical things that I need to build buy-in for? So whether it's sort of, let's say, a vendor contract with an HCM provider, or whether you're looking at just organizing even a social event, all the different sort of, it's always worth to sort of plot out the different stakeholders that are involved in that, and sort of also be quite methodical about thinking about, what are their needs? What do they want to get out of it? Who are my detractors? Who's going to be the most noisy one in the process? And who are the ones that could be, detractors at the end of the process and derail the process? And so that sort of helps you to sort of think around, how do I make this a smooth process for everybody?
Excellent. I think knowing your end result and the consequences, I think, is critical for any initiative, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important to also reflect on that, and also to show, an ability to think forward. So if I think about the executives who have done this quite successful, it's the ones who have managed to get results with the least amount of noise.
I think, Tamara, using the reverse psychology of expecting the worst and then going forward, I think that's another great strategy to use, because then that you can eliminate all of the noisy ones, that are the detractors, knowing that these are expected. So, using reverse psychology and getting to your objective, I think, is also a great way to start.
Yeah, exactly. So that's wonderful. So yes, that's essentially from exercise number 1. From exercise number 2, again, I think it's really about plotting out that stakeholder map and going through piece by piece and thinking, how do I sort of deal with all these different people who are going to be part of the decision-making process? And how do I manage the sort of change process for this? And you'll find that a lot of the executives that we speak to who've managed to do this quite successfully have been quite perceptive as to who they need to get on side first, and who will be essentially their sponsors. So many times what we see is somebody is actually winning over somebody who's quite noisy and a potential terrible detractor. Like if they say no, then it could derail the whole project. So sometimes it's good to start with someone that everybody knows is very resistant to change, and get them to sort of come on board, get them to get their buy-in. Because if that person is already, known to be very resistant, if they get the buy-in and they have sway, that can often have a really positive domino effect on the rest of the organization and the rest of the change initiative. And I think so nowadays it's really important to understand how to make change happen, especially as we're in many, many cases working in a hybrid or a completely virtual environment. It's really important to know how to build buy-in in ways that maybe you haven't had to do before. Yeah. Excellent. And I think one of the things that we always want to keep in mind as well is that, we want to make sure that we learn from all of our experiences. Nobody's going to get it right the first time around. Nobody is the finished product. So we're all going to have to sort of evolve and learn from our experiences. And really that's the crux of what learning agility is all about. It's really about reflecting on your experiences. What would you do differently? And then sort of taking inventory of that and making sure that you remember those experiences the next time you come across them. Yeah. Super. Does that help, Helen?
Yes, absolutely. There's great insights there, Tamara. So we almost come to the end of your session, Tamara. Any closing remarks from you?
Yeah, no, I just want to really thank you for inviting me along and giving me the honor of sharing, our latest thinking on what the success profile looks like for, the future CPO. I really do hope that people have taken away some sort of interesting thoughts, items to think about as they sort of look to the future and develop their careers.
Perfect. We will share this link with all of our attendees, and you'll definitely get a report. It will be interesting to know, and please share the findings with us as well. It will be nice for us to know how this has impacted them.
Fantastic.
All
Wonderful.
right. Thanks,
Thank you
Tamara.
so
I
much.
appreciate your time. Amazing presentation. I wish we could have a lot of people interactive, but we will share their comments with you. We will share the
Fantastic.
reflection with them as well. And perhaps they're not able to kind of share it on the platform, but maybe we can bring in those comments and share them with you offline as
Yeah.
well. All
No,
right.
absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Thanks, Tamara. Appreciate your time.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.